Hello everybody and welcome back to Ryujin Tech. Today I'm doing another Unreal Engine tutorial on ALS v3 using Unreal Engine 4.23. This tutorial is going to explain how we can add a rifle overlay system into the ALS animation blueprint along with modifying the ALS base character, enabling the character to track its weapon type and match it with the weapon system overlay that's provided in the animation blueprint. This tutorial is also making use of animations and meshes that are from the ALS v4 project. However, I've modified these and adopted them to fit in this tutorial. They are available at my GitHub repo, which is available at the link in the video description. Please download them and follow along. Okay, so for the first thing we're going to do is we're going to import our animations. So inside of the zip folder that is available on GitHub, you download it, open it up, and then inside of the animations folder, we're going to copy this overlay folder. And then you're going to go into the folders for wherever your Unreal Engine project is. And then we will go through until we get to the animations. And then we're simply going to paste that folder in here, and then this folder contains all the M4A1 assets for our character. And now when we start up our project, we will be able to see the expected animations available inside of the content folder. So if I come into characters, mannequin, animations, we have overlay, M4A1, and then we have the variety of different content that's inside of that folder. Next, we want to modify our ALS base character. Before I do that, though, I do want to go inside of the enums folder here, inside of the ALS v3 blueprints enums, and take note of this weapon type enum that's here. So this already has the unarmed pistol, rifle, launcher, and hammer weapon types by default. This is provided to us by ALS v3. This is not something that had to be created afterward. And so we're going to go now into our ALS base character. And then inside of our ALS base character, I want to create a new variable. This variable is going to be called weapon type. And it's going to be a variable type of weapon type. That's going to be the enum that I just showed you. And then we want to make it private because we want to control the ability to be able to access it. How will we do this? Relatively easily. We're going to go back into the content folder. We're going to open up the ALS interface. And now we're going to add two new functions into the interface. For anybody who's not aware, an interface just allows us to be able to name functions that we expect to have available inside of whatever object is implementing this interface. So for us, this interface is being implemented in the ALS base character as well as the animation blueprint. So I'm going to create my first one, and I'm going to call this get current weapon. And since I'm a getter, that means I have to return something. So it's going to be an output. So I'm going to output a weapon type, and its type is also going to be weapon type. And I'm also going to add a second function. And this one's going to be called set current weapon type. But let's change it to type and not just have just weapon. That way I know the object type also based off the name that I'm working with. Okay, so on the set current weapon type, I'm going to input an object. So this is going to be a new weapon type, and it's going to be of type weapon type. So I can now get my current weapon. I can set my current weapon using the interface. And then the last thing I want to do is set a category to help organize here. So I'm just going to throw this into a weapon type category. I can save, compile, and then I'm done with my interface. So I'm going to create a function. I'm going to call this on weapon type changed. On weapon type changed is going to have an input, and that input is going to be a new weapon type. It's also going to be of type weapon type. And then what I want to do is set the character's weapon type to this new weapon type. And then I'm going to put this into category called weapon system. Okay, fantastic. So now I have this function that allows me to be able to change my weapon type. And now what I can do is I can go back to the event graph. I can go into my interface events. I'm going to add a new interface. I'm going to do set current weapon type, and I'm going to grab the event that's right here. And so then this event, I'm going to drag out. I'm going to call, actually, before I do that, I'm going to grab my weapon type object here. I'm going to get it. I'm going to pull this out, and then I'm just going to do a not equals. I'm just going to do a real quick check here. And then I'm going to call on weapon type changed. So what I'm doing is, actually, let me just pull this down and rearrange this real quick. So that way it's a little bit. A little bit easier to try and organize here. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm checking the new weapon type against the current weapon type. If this current weapon type is different, then I want to set my weapon type to the new weapon type. If they're the same, I don't need to set anything. I can just ignore it. Okay, that's great. And then from here, I can now go into my event graph again. Then I can go to my begin play. I'm going to just slide this stuff over. And then I'm going to bring out my unweapon type changed. And I'm going to leave it as unarmed. I'm going to call this in the middle here. I see that I messed up. My weapon type is inside a weapon systems down here. I didn't change the category up here. Okay. Now that's inside of the right spot. So at the very beginning, I'm going to make sure the weapon type that's being set is set to unarmed. Okay, so next what I want to do is manage my interfaces. So I have this weapon type interface that I just created before, and I want to go in here and set this up. So this is returning a weapon type. I'm just going to bring over my weapon type object from my character class, and I'm going to return the weapon type that I have here. And then going back into the event graph, I'm going to go into, sorry, not the event graph. I want to go into the player input graph. And I'm going to add some player input here. So I'm going to use the O key. I'm going to use the P key. I press O because P shows up way faster than if I just typed in P. Okay, so when O is pressed, I want to set current weapon type for both of these. And so on O, I want it to be rifle, and on P, I want it to be unarmed. And then just for validation, I'm going to print string, bring this up here for both of them. I'll pull out my weapon type, and then I will just put that into the print. So I'll save, compile, play. So if I press O, I have rifle. If I press P, I'm now unarmed. I now have my weapon system states inside of my ALS base character. Now we can get ready to start editing our mannequin animation blueprint. Before I do that, I just want to go into the animation overlay and then into our M4A1 folder, just so we can go over a couple of things. I'm going to be utilizing the standing animations for this tutorial. And so we have a bunch of different animations. We have the running animations. So then inside we have the standing, we have aim, we have the aim offset animations, and then we have a couple different idle ones over here as well. Inside of the AO, the aiming offset, this is set up so that way the character is able to aim and everything. So this should already be set up inside of inside of the files once you have everything that's imported from the zip file. So then we have the blend space here. This is for being able to blend the top and the bottom animations. Don't worry about the stutter step. That all gets handled with the ALS v3 blending. So the reason why we have the ready here twice is because this allows you to stand and aim and then be able to walk and aim. And then once you start going into more of a run, then your ability to aim is going to be impacted. And then we also have the standard movement, and this is for if you are in an idle position and you're not trying to aim, this blend space is utilized to manage that. So now we can go back into our BP animation blueprint. And the first thing I want to do is create a variable. And so the variable I'm going to create here is going to be called weapon type. And so this weapon type is also going to be of type weapon type. Okay, so we are halfway there. Okay, so now we have to actually set this somehow. So inside of the animation blueprint event graph, we have a set default values function that's over here. And so we want to add to this so that way we can start implementing our functions. And so actually I want to do one thing first. Before we do that, I need to go into the event graph again, and I want to go to interface events. There we go. Okay, so at the bottom of this interface event, I need to create a new interface first. So I'm going to set current weapon type. That's going to be the event. And so what I am going to do here is I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to pull this out, and if do a not equal, and then I'll pull out the weapon type. So if the weapon types are not equal, then what I want to do is I want to set the weapon type to be this value. Oh, I need to put a branch in there. Okay, so if the weapon type is different than the new weapon type, then I want to set the weapon type. If they're the same, I don't need to do anything. And then now I can go back into my set default values. If you missed how to get there, then go to the event graph. Over to the side, we have set default values. So now what we want to do is pull out the ALS base character, and we're going to get current weapon type. So this get current weapon type is going to call the get current weapon type that we have inside of our character, which will return the weapon type. And then from here, we want to set current weapon type inside of the animation blueprint. We're going to set it with the weapon type that comes out of the get current weapon type. And then don't forget to reconnect everything so that way this stack is called. So this is going to allow us to be able to get our default values. And then if we go back into the event graph, we have this other function that happens every frame. And this is going to get the variables for the base blueprint. And so what we want to do here is we're going to, again, pull out from ALS base character, and we are going to get current weapon type. And then the get current weapon type, we're going to plug into set current weapon type. And then we'll plug in the weapon type that's in there. So we're going to grab the weapon type every frame from the character and see if it's changed and do the update. Okay, perfect. So now, since we have that working, we can go into our, just to make sure that it's working, we can go into our interface events here, and we can branch off out of here, and we're going to do a print string. Then plug this thing in here, save, compile, and then just so that way we're able to see it inside of the player input graph, I removed the previous print. So if I play, we're able to print that we have successfully changed the weapon types. Now comes the slightly challenging part, a little bit more attention to detail oriented, as well as a little more time consuming. So we're going to now modify the animation graph so we have the ability to actually play our animations when we want to. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new state machine. And this new state machine, I'm going to call WeaponSystemsState machine. And then I want to cache it after it's completed. And then rename it to WeaponSystemsState machine. That way I have a cached pose that I can easily reference. I will comment this for my own reference. Okay, so now I've got this. The next step is to go inside and actually set up our state machine here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into a new state. The new state is going to be called default. So inside of default, I'm going to play the main state machine cached pose. So this means I will come into the weapon state machine, and at the very least, I'm just going to play back the same pose that's already set and be done. So from here, I'm now going to go into a conduit. And so this conduit, I'm going to call the weapon overlay state. And the reason why we use a conduit is because the conduit allows for us to be able to have a variety of different weapon states. So we can just toggle in between all of those: rifle, pistol, shotgun, bazooka, whatever the weapons are that you're using. And so we do set the can't enter transition to true. And then now we're going to go into the connector between default and weapon state conduit here. And then we want to allow it so we can go into the weapon state when the weapon type is not equal to unarmed. So if we are any weapon state other than unarmed, we can come into the conduit over here, and then to leave will be the weapon type is equal to unarmed. Okay. That's the first step. Okay, so now we are able to get into our weapon state. The next thing that we want to do is we need to be able to get into a new state that's going to be called rifle idle. So how do we get into this rifle idle? Well, we're going to come in here, and if the weapon type is equal to rifle, then we can enter idle. Likewise, we can go from the rifle state back to the weapon state, and we do this when the weapon type is not equal to rifle. Okay, that's great. Now we have this idle pose here, and so we can come in, and I want to do a blend poses by bool. Boolean I want to use is ALS aiming. And then on my, so we're going to check if ALS is aiming. If we're aiming, then I want to use the M4A1 stand ready pose. And then if we are not aiming, then I want to use the M4A1 stand alert pose. Fantastic. Okay, so that's the first part of it. And then we want to change our blending here. So if true, go to 0.5. If false, we'll do 0.5. Now, from rifle idle, we want to be able to do a movement. So we're going to move to another state, and we're going to call this rifle movement. And so to get to rifle movement, we need to make sure that we're actually moving. So we'll get is moving. So if we're moving, then we can get in. Otherwise, if we are in the rifle movement, we can leave when we are not moving. Not equals. I need the Boolean not. Fantastic. Okay, so now inside of the rifle movement, what I want to do is do another blend by pose. Or blend pose by bool. So then here, I'm going to actually have to check two different conditions. So the first thing I'm checking is if we're aiming, because I have my movement aiming blend space that we created earlier. And then the other option is I want to grab the ALS gate. And then I want to check if it's not equal to something. And I'm going to check it to sprinting. So if we're aiming and not sprinting, then I want to be able to use my aiming movement. And if I'm sprinting and holding down aiming, I don't want to be able to aim. So I'm going to pull out my gate value here. So this is provided by ALS. The gate value can then be fed into our blend space. So we have our aim movement, and then we also have our regular movement. And so this allows us to be able to set up everything so that way we can have two different states inside of the state machine. We're aiming, we're not aiming, and then we set our values accordingly. So we're almost getting there. The next part is going to be from the rifle movement, we have the ability to go back into the weapon overlay state. So you could be moving, and let's say we switch our weapons. And so this happens when the weapon type is not equal to rifle. You can keep moving. We just got to switch our pose accordingly. Okay, next state is going to be in air. So we're going to create a new state, and we're going to call this rifle in air. And then the rifle in air is going to go to weapon state. So we're going to go into air if the following statements are true. So we're going to grab our ALS movement mode. Oh, that's not the right one. We're going to grab our ALS movement mode. Yeah, ALS movement mode. Okay, so here we're just going to, if it's falling. Oh, goodness. Okay, if it's equal to falling, then we can enter our falling state. And then we can also head back into rifle movement if the following statements are true. So we'll grab the ALS movement mode is not equal to falling. And we want to grab is moving. Are we moving? If we're moving, we can go back into movement mode only if we're not falling. And then we also have our weapon state here where we can come into the conduit again. And so that's going to be if the weapon type does not equal, oh my goodness. If weapon type does not equal rifle. Likewise, we can come from the conduit state here to the rifle state, to the rifle in air. And we can do this if the ALS movement type, or movement mode, excuse me, is equal to falling and equal to falling. And then we also need to make sure that the weapon type is equal to rifle. Okay. And then, so that should be able to handle all of that. We can also do a weapon state conduit to the rifle movement. And so what we're going to check here is that the weapon type is equal to rifle. Oh, equal to the rifle and is moving. So if we're moving, we can just get directly into movement graph. It's not necessary because the way that the flow works is if we were moving, then we would just, if we were moving and switch to weapons, we would just go to the rifle and then move into the rifle movement at that time. So this should allow us to now be able to get most of this stuff. We just have one more relationship to add here, and that's going to be between the idle and the in air. And so here we're going to go from idle to in air if ALS movement mode is equal to falling. And then we can head back into the rifle state from, or the rifle idle state from being in the air if the ALS movement mode is not equal to falling. And we also need to not be moving. Okay, so we don't want to be moving and we don't want to be falling, and then we can move back into our idle. Okay, so that should be able to handle everything from there. We just did the states. Okay, so we did the rifle movement. Now we have to do the rifle in air. And so what I'm going to do here is we have a M4A1 stand. Stand. There should have been a M4A1 stand idle. There we go. Just didn't have it typed out correctly. Okay, so this is where you're standing with one arm up. It'll blend in with the bottom half of the body as we're falling. And just double check, rifle movement has animations, and so does the rifle idle. And okay, so there we go. Now we can head back into the animation blueprint. So we have our weapon state machine that is setting everything up. Great, and now it's being cached, which is equally great. So now what I want to do is grab the main state machine cached, and then I want to grab the weapon state machine cached objects, and I want to blend these together so that way I can add my weapon overlay on top of the normal overlay if I'm in a condition where I'm able to be using that. So I'm going to grab my layered blend per bone. And so I have my base pose is the main state. My blend pose 0 is my weapon state machine. And then I have to add a branch filter here. So the branch filter allows me to be able to target how I'm able to do this blend. And so I'm going to do the bone is spine 0.3. And then I'm going to do a depth of 4. Mesh base rotation blend will be set for true. Okay, so I can save that, and then I'm going to pull this out, and I'm going to cache the pose. So new saved cache. And then I'm going to name this weapon overlay pose. And then I will comment this. Fantastic. We're getting there. Okay, now comes a little bit more complicated in here, just to finish up the last part. So I'm going to just pull this off for now. I'm going to break the pose coming out of there, just Alt and then left click on. I'm also going to copy and paste this aim offset. And then I'm going to get rid of the state machine cache reference that is here. And instead, I'm going to use the weapon overlay pose that I just made. Okay, so this is going to be my normal aim offset. I'm going to change this one to my weapon aim offset. And so then inside of this weapon aim offset, I need to change to a different offset object. So I'm going to use my M4A1 stand aim offset that was imported earlier. And then now what I want to do is do a blend poses by bool. And then I'm going to be blending based off of ALS aiming. And then what I want to do now is cache this object. So this is going to be my AO pose blend. And then what I can do now is grab my cached object and then throw that into the full body slot here. And then save, compile, and then let's see if this works. So if I press O to be in the rifle state, I'm able to pull out my rifle animation. If I press P, I'm not in my rifle state, and now I can toggle between the two of these. And this is how we add the aim offset for our character. And so you can see I'm running and I have my animation for that. If I let go of aiming, I'm sprinting with my rifle pose. So everything seems to be working as expected. And this is how you add the rifle aim offset onto your ALS V3 character. One small fix that I didn't notice the first time was I didn't have this pin connected. So when you compiled, you had this little alert up here, and there was an alert down here that you can't enter the transition. So all you have to do is just make sure that you connect the booleans, and then now you should be able to play, and everything is working properly. There we go. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this tutorial. I hope you found it useful. If you have any comments or questions, please just leave it down below and keep an eye out, as I will be doing a follow-up video on this. I'll be creating a weapon blueprint component and getting that attached to the character, where the character is holding it, built off of the states that we did in this tutorial. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next one.